Hello, everybody, and welcome to Series 2, Episode 2 of the Unidentified Anomalous podcast. I'm Digby Furno, and joining me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Tom Cortex Zero, and Paul, who is having some video trouble, so you won't see him moving an awful lot. I've been there, Paul, but last time I was holding a pint of beer for about 2 hours.
Yeah, man. You delayed the sip.
I just got to hold still for the entire time.
Yeah, don't move.
Nice
don't
big
move.
smell. Oh, what a week! Oh my God!
Yeah, what a week.
Digby, if I may, please, just because last few weeks when we've done the show, as we always do, we always ask each other, "How was our week?" Right? And we always open up with Digby saying, "Tom, how was your week, mate?" I'm back. I feel. Yeah, it was a little loud, but that was the point. That's how we do things on the show. Yeah, just a little down. I want to just let everybody know that I feel like I have found the major source of a lot of like what I've been dealing with between my emotions and how my body was feeling. I'm on a different regimen. I completely stripped my diet and changed it. And I woke up this morning very specifically feeling like I was like reborn. Like I feel like I could go run a mile. I'm amped to be here with two of my best fucking friends in the world. I am so happy that Fringe is going to be here for us. This is a big week for the show. We have a lot of incredible guests lined up. It feels like a lot of things are falling into place right now. So I just want to let all of you know that I feel great and I hope you feel like I do. And I'm so happy to be here with Digby and Paul and all of you. I feel thankful. I feel good. I'm energetic. I'm going to get a lot done today, even after the show. And I love UA Pod, man. I live for this.
It's good to have you back on full steam.
I know.
Welcome
I know.
back.
The fire's there. The fire has returned.
That's it. It's here.
It's come back at the right time because let's face it, in the next couple of weeks, we've got a busy couple of weeks.
We do.
Starting today. We've
blessing.
got hell.
I mean, Digby, we are so fortunate and so blessed to have the opportunities that we have in front of us right now. If someone had told me, 10, 12, even 14 years ago that this would be where I was years down the road, I would have thought they were nuts. I'm thankful to the universe for it. I'm humbled by it, man. I'm so excited. So excited. I've never been so invigorated for our show. This is incredible.
It's gone from strength to strength, really, especially over the last couple of weeks, and I think our little rebrand has reinvigorated us and got us a bit amped up. And we put in the hours this week just gone, especially, and have managed to rally up quite a number of guests. I mean, we're used to doing a show a week. We're filming 2 things on Tuesday. We're filming 1 thing on Wednesday. We've got 2 things to do on Sunday. We've got several things going on next week. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this little intro into all the guests we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks. In fact, there's a couple to add to this as well. So wow, there we have it. Lineup. And this is our lineup. So today, the 24th, we have Fringe coming on. She's coming on in about 20 minutes or so, I think. And then we are recording live with Matt Ford at 8 p.m. on Wednesday evening. That's a late one for me. That's starting at midnight. You Americans, seriously, the things I have to put up to be able to work with you monkeys on the other side of the pond.
So I'm an hour behind you, too.
Exactly. You are now, aren't you? Yes, absolutely. So that's a 1 a.m. start for you. Anyway, I'll have a nap in the day. It'll be fine. So we've got that on Wednesday evening, and then on Tuesday we are recording with Francisco, who's a European Member of Parliament. They had a hearing in European Parliament this week on UAP, which hasn't been covered very much. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Francisco about that.
Absolutely.
About that. And on Tuesday we're also recording with Avi Loeb. So we're doing an early morning recording and an afternoon recording on Tuesday. So the Francisco interview will be played in full on the channel on Thursday, and Avi Loeb will be premiering on Friday. Saturday, we thought we would take the day off.
Never really.
We're joining forces with the guys over at UAP Studies who are coming on the show as well. And then we go straight from our show with UA Pudding Studies to close off hashtag UFO Twitter Week. So we are literally with a closing act, you know?
Right. And you just said it, Digby. Today is the first day of UFO Twitter Week. So if you guys are on X, and you know what? You don't even have to be on X. If you're anywhere, just use that hashtag. It'll bring everybody to X and see what's going on, because that's obviously the central hub. That's why it's called UFO Twitter Week, obviously. But our dear friend Astral has been doing this for, God, I don't know how long this has been going. I'd have to ask him how long he's been doing UFO Twitter Week. But it's been very successful. It's been ramping up each time. There's an incredible list of guests, speakers, hosts, and everybody else in between that we've compiled for UFO Twitter Week. So shout out to Astral, because he does such an amazing job of rallying the troops for this. We're super excited to be part of it. We're on the poster for it. We have this coming Sunday, we're going to be kind of closing out the week. But even if you're not listed, we always encourage people, because there's a big family, a big group, grassroots effort. Please, if you're doing a space, if you're doing a podcast and you're on X, use that hashtag. You don't have to be somebody that's listed on the poster or in the ad to necessarily be part of it. Everybody's part of it. Those are just the main faces that have helped coordinate it. Obviously, we have some special guests like Whitley Strieber. But you can just be a part of it just by hosting a space randomly and just putting it in the title. Hashtag UFO Twitter Week. Let's get it trending. We're trying to make some changes here, and this is a good way to do it. Do whatever's within your power. And this is how change happens, and this is how we push for this transparency and truth.
You are spot on, my friend. Absolutely. And I thought that there was talk last time that it was going to actually change to UFO X Week, but it never has. It stayed.
I know. I noticed that. I'm gonna have to message Astro and be like, "Is there a conspiracy here?" Yeah, I just
here to stay. Yeah.
I'm gonna remote view his inbox.
Good one. Right. Without further ado, let's go over to this week's news.
Beyond the mundane.
Beyond the mundane, for those of you that are new, is our news segment, because there's nothing mundane about the news we tell here on the Unidentified Anomalous podcast. And the first bit of news this week comes from Paul. So, Paul, straight over to you, my friend.
Yeah, it was actually a little disappointing with turnout with the Chuck Schumer rally they were supposed to have in New York. From the pictures that I saw, I think there's maybe 30 to 40 people there. They had nice signage. Actually, I think somebody put a lot of money into it as far as the effort. I think they did a good job with the signs. They were really nice, but just not a huge turnout. Some of the people like Dave Foley that were supposed to go. Yeah, there wasn't enough people to hold them. They did. They did their part for the people that were there. I'm really glad that they went. I wish the turnout would have been better, just to kind of show. Just to show the support, I guess just to, I was hoping it'd be at least a few hundred people in front of his office to make him think, yeah, this is a popular issue. But with such a small turnout, maybe I'm wondering if they're going to think, it's not that big of a, not that important for my reelection. Yeah. So it was a little disappointing. I know the thing about UAP topics is it's so spread out across the world. I was hoping New York would be a nice hub for it, but maybe that's just not the right place. Maybe Washington, D.C. or something's a better spot to do something like this.
Good point.
But just to kind of have something that everybody would go to, maybe in Washington. But I know there were some issues with the Schumer amendment. It was the best one so far, but hopefully they come up with something better. I know Tim Burchett and Representative Luna, they were talking about some new language and some power subpoena, things that Danny Sheehan was kind of hinting towards that they were supposed to have, which would be really nice if they come up with that, but that has yet to be seen.
I think the problem with this, and actually, well, Tom, what you said to me earlier, you were spot on, is what was nice with the people that turned up is the quality of the people that turned up. Everybody behaved themselves. It was very respectful, which is great. But as Paul, as you have said, it's disappointing to see so few people turn up, and you've got to wonder why. Was it not advertised properly? Was it not advertised for long enough? Did they choose the wrong day, the wrong time of day? All of these things. But
I think it's all of that.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah, it's all of the above.
I wanted
because
to
from
go
12 to 2 in the middle of the workday. Yeah, it's not like you can take off work to go do.
I was at work. I'm on the East Coast. I wanted to attend, but I work a day job as well. And until I can part ways with that day job, and I'm making enough money off of my content, new paradigm, and the podcast and all those things, I'm not. I do have those responsibilities to maintain. I have to pay my bills. That's just how it works. So I think it would have been better to hold this on like a Saturday or a Sunday. But I will say to those that did attend, like I deeply appreciate the effort that they did put in. Some of them came dressed in the tee. The signage, like you said, was really nice, and they all seemed like they really had their heads on straight. So for that, I do believe that the people that did show up deserve our gratitude, because it was a good showing for what it was. Absolutely. But you know what we need to do? You need to have a nationwide rally, right? Have a situation like but we could use a number of different social justice subjects that drew national attention. Black Lives Matter. Think of there's been so many. They had
probably not the best example though, because that went a bit wrong in the end.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how some of those things turn out.
Yeah, but I think the idea is right. Like I think that if they would have, Sandy's posting in the comments just what I was about to bring up. They didn't give enough notice for it. It was kind of short notice and very limited area. Not many people are around the New York area probably care too much about the topic. I think they're spread all over the world that they care about the topic, but they can't, of course, all fly to New York to go. The ones that were there that did get interviewed were very passionate and very, very good representatives. I'm glad that they
agreed. Even with all that in bearing that in mind, we're still talking about 30 people. There's millions of people that live in New York City, even more that live in New York State. There was. It was doing the rounds on Twitter. There should have been more people there. But also there were people that said that they were going to be there that didn't turn up. I didn't see any images of David Foley going, and he said he was going to go. He's obviously got his own reasons why he didn't. I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm not.
No, not at all.
It was done with New Paradigm Institute. Danny Sheehan wasn't there. Everybody's got their own things going on. But then maybe
it also kind of points to the fracture.
But instead of just doing this as a knee-jerk reaction and doing it so quickly and not getting any momentum behind it, it would have been better to plan something in a month's time and really put some effort into making sure that the maximum amount of people could go possible. Because actually, my fear is that it's actually done more harm than good. Because as you said, now it just makes it look like it's not that much of an important topic, and people have got other things on their mind, which, let's face it, the average Joe at the moment does have an awful lot more than just
they do. That's the catch to it. But like it like you were saying, I think you're kind of pointing that direction. It really shows a fracture in the community itself, and I think we need to do away with a lot of those the bickering between parties of this school of thought and this school of thought. Absolutely. And kind of get under one umbrella and get basically to where we all want the same thing. Yeah, we all want the same thing. We need to stop, bickering whether it's black or white or red or purple, just and just kind of get together on one subject and one unified plan and take it from there.
That's that. I mean, if you think about it too, there's a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to UFOs / UAP and interaction with non-human intelligence as Earthlings. But at the end of the day, no matter which school of thought you come from, there are still some basic general principles that are present in all of them. We are being interacted with forces and intelligences that we do not understand. They are not from Earth. Like, we all agree on that from those different schools of thought. So that just needs to be the main emphasis. And the biggest one of all, really, aside from those two, Earthbound at least, is the fact that they're lying to us about it. The clip that we're going to play today, featuring our our dear friend George Knapp, everybody's friend in the community at this point. Who doesn't love George Knapp, right? Like, he's great. I mean, I feel like that's actually one of the best statements that I've heard so far. He really,
let's get to that now, Tom.
Yeah, play. I would love to let everybody hear this.
Gleeful it was, patting themselves on the back in this report. The related press releases that were released by the Pentagon and Arrow, the Pentagon's designated UFO UAP investigative arm. It describes in excruciating detail how hard they worked, all the steps they took, digging and searching high and low in every attic, down in the basement, under the couch cushions to reach these conclusions that they reach. And boy, oh boy, did they. It looks like a paper that Bart Simpson wrote the night before it was due. You know, they don't give sources for it, no methods to explain how they reach these conclusions.
Didn't they say like Harry Reid was a senator from New Mexico?
New Mexico. The Department of Cover-Ups, after an exhaustive investigation of itself, has determined there was no cover-up. Really? I mean, you investigate yourself and you expect to get the truth?
We read this report. I mean, what is it? 63 page. So the whole report, I printed it, right? So looking through it, reading the whole thing, it is absolutely unbelievably biased and ridiculous. It almost acts as if people are stupid. They decided not to look at the Tic Tac UFO case. Is that correct? Like in the report, I read through it pretty quick, but they didn't address it, right?
Doesn't even get mentioned. Probably the most significant UFO case of all time because of the impact it had. But it's clear that, you know, this was influenced by Sean Kirkpatrick, who's made some of these same kinds of statements in the few interviews he's given to friendly media. We've explained everything. It's either prosaic or it's a secret project that's ours. But at the same time, they've launched this new initiative to create this special UFO detection kits that'll be spread throughout the military, I guess, that'll be designed specifically to gather the kind of information that they apparently don't think we have now.
Right. So they're partnering with the Department of Energy. Have you ever heard about the Department of Energy? Interested
Once
in
or twice. Yeah, they've been out here in Nevada a little bit, you know, little place called the Nevada Test Site. Yeah. And there's still a lot of UFO incidents out there around nuclear weapons. Sure. You know, that's the problem with telling lies. You have to remember the lies that you told. So they say there's no evidence of any UFO crashes. There's no evidence of any cover-up. They forgot that they've already admitted there was a cover-up. Roswell, you know, when you say UFO crashes in this report, they say it's just all circular telephone kind of stuff. The same little group of people telling the story that recirculates around. No. The first report of a UFO crash retrieval came from them. They put out the release in 1947 that said there's a crash saucer and we've got it. And then they changed it to something else. And then years later, they changed it again. And they admitted that it was a cover-up. They're covering up the mogul balloon. Of course, the mogul doesn't explain it either, but they've already admitted that they lied, and now they're lying about lying. It's ridiculous.
There we go.
I love that.
So well said.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's so simple. It's so easy to digest too, but it's true. They're lying about lying. Like, I mean, you guys talked about this, right? The Pentagon. I made that really long-winded reply on Green Street's tweet, and I feel like almost any rationally thinking individual can go look at that and be like, yeah, how could I trust the Pentagon? Like, what have they done that would lead me to think I should?
Anyway, moving on. So we had an important event in Europe this week, which unfortunately hasn't really been covered that much, which we really need to get behind. And that was somewhat of a hearing in the European Union. I haven't heard them calling it a hearing, so it's obviously just more of a prelude, let's call it, to a hearing. It's more of a conversation. But it was a 2-hour hearing in the European Parliament in Brussels this week, led by Francisco Giario, who is coming on our show next week. So we're recording with him on Tuesday. And that episode will be going out on Thursday, sorry. But let's play a little clip of it now, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay, let's start then. Let's keep it on time. So thanks everyone for coming. I will read some introductory remarks and then we'll go to the presentations, okay? So first of all, I would like to thank everyone that is involved in this exchange of views, as well as all the participants, citizens, and institutions that are seeing us online. I won't take much time because I do feel that the focus should be on the speakers and afterwards on the Q&A session. However, let me take a few minutes to share some political information and some technical details. Politically, this event has four main objectives. First, start a debate inside the European Parliament on unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is a topic that is dear to thousands of Europeans. The feedback that I've been having from several EU citizens and outside the EU borders has been overwhelming. Secondly, to decrease the stigma associated with the topic inside important sectors of our society, such as civil aviation, the military, journalism, but also politics. Third, and probably the most important, it's essential that all the debates surrounding UAPs is based in the scientific method and held in close cooperation with public institutions, the academia, civil society, and all the professionals that are willing to open and voluntarily share their experiences. Fourth, and lastly, the path of the European Union in regards of UAPs must be made with transparency, data sharing, and accountability, so we don't lose our credibility in a topic that is dear to many of our constituencies and citizens. Whatever the findings, we must foster this scientific approach to improve our institutions. Therefore, my work as a member of the European Parliament focuses on the creation of an EU harmonized system of monitoring, gathering, and analysis of data on UAPs. The EU, institutionally composed of 27 member states, does not have such system, and thus thousands of citizens and experienced professionals don't know or feel safe to report events they can't explain. We must improve our scientific methodology and connect the EU institutions to the public and academia in a transparent and credible way. For the sake of transparency, as a politician, I've made 3 written questions to the European Commission, with just one by now was replied. I've also made 2 interventions in the European plenary about the subject, and last week I've introduced an individual motion for resolution that requests the European Commission the creation of an harmonized system of collecting data and reporting on UAPs inside the EU by upgrading the regulations, Regulation 376/2014 on the reporting, analysis, and follow-up of occurrences in civil aviation.
Let's leave that there. I watched the whole thing. It's about 2 hours long. I will find the link and put it in the chat in a bit, so if anybody wants to go and watch the whole thing. It was a great event. I thought they did a fantastic job. They were plagued with technical issues, though, throughout the whole thing. They tried to get Ryan Graves on and they couldn't get any audio, and then they couldn't get any video, and then they had to put him on later, and it kind of disrupted the whole flow of the thing. But they had Ryan Graves on there. Yes, they had a 737 cargo pilot come on who's quite well known, who's also coming on the show next week to come and talk to us. Actually, no, not next week. On the 7th, he's coming on to talk to us. Well, I think that's going to be
hell of a witness.
So he's taken some photographs from the cockpit. He's very famous actually on Instagram. He's got a large following on Instagram because he takes amazing photos from the cockpit. But he was Christian. He was one of the best speakers there. He was very articulated. He was very eloquent in the way that he spoke. Very clear-headed. It's definitely worth a watch. And what was really nice about this conversation was, opposed to the way that it was done in the US, they had obviously invited members of the public or experts to come along, sit and watch. And they all had the ability to ask questions to the panel. So it was definitely more of a conversation. And, you know, it was more conversation than you got in the hearing in the US. The one in the US almost felt, I mean, it felt quite scripted because everybody knew what was going to be said. This was very
forced.
different. Yeah, exactly. Ryan Graves was fantastic
really want to be
on it. Yeah, Ryan Graves was fantastic, as always, very clear and concise in the way that he speaks. But again, my disappointment is always going to be whenever they do these things in a political way, it's always about safe aerospace and, you know, take the woo out of it. Don't really get down to the details. Don't get down to people's personal experiences. Let's look at this. Let's justify what we need to do from a military perspective. We need to make our airs safe. We need to form this group of people to monitor it, to make sure our airspace is safe. We need more funding so we can protect our airspace. And it's just, they're just completely ignoring the roots of the situation here, what it means, what it's about. Everybody's ignoring the bigger question. We're talking about our place in the universe.
They're sort of forced into this position because of the previous decades of stigma. Like, it's almost like they've been forced into a narrow hallway, and this is the only way to get to the door. It's like, the threat narrative and anything that goes with that. It's like this is the way that I've been looking at this whole thing over like the last few weeks. Absolutely. They absolutely created this situation. And what I'm seeing, at least, right? Like, if there's a disclosure plan in play, which there appears to be, with other sides fighting against it too, we're gonna present this information in ways that will grab the attention of policymakers, lawmakers, political representatives, and such, right? So they leave breadcrumbs. And what are those breadcrumbs? There are threats in the sky that we're not really sure of their origin, right? So then that moves into, what if it's Chinese or Russian? The alarm bells start going off, right? But then they dig a little deeper, and that's where they're led to that door. They open the door and they're like, this isn't Russian. This is not Chinese.
That's why I like Christian's approach to it. Christian's he's very much like Ryan Graves. He kind of goes through it and says, look, I have pictures of these things. There's obviously something up here. We're not getting any answers on what it is. We get it on radar pings and it's there. So, and I have photos. So what is this? And that's the simplest question you can answer that no one has a solution for. So it's a threat in that respect. It's dangerous.
One of the things that's spoken in it that I didn't realize is, and you guys may have already known this, but I didn't realize that China already has a direct shoot down order. So if anything, a UAP is seen in Chinese space, they don't even need authorization. Their order is to go up there and shoot it down instantly.
Yeah.
Do we have real quick a shoot down order in the chat? What's up, Nomad? He's looking for a link for Christian, I'm assuming for social media.
I only have him on Instagram, which is I think he's most active on. I will put that in the.
I've got it. I've got him. I'll get it up in a second. So Tom, you talk, and I will find this for you.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, as far as witnesses are concerned, pilots are some of the best that you're going to get, because when you are a pilot, you're already a trained observer. Like, it takes a certain type of person to fly an aircraft. It is not a simple task whatsoever. If you've ever gone into an actual full-fledged flight simulator, you will see right in front of you, there's a lot going on, to put it very simply and very plainly. So these individuals have to very much be aware of what's going on around them at all times, and they have to be able to identify things around them in the skies to avoid potential accidents, hazardous situations, etc. They are very, very certain that what they are seeing is not normal. Not to mention the fact that you can't play the Russian and Chinese card, because World War II pilots were seeing these. This has been going on for, like, we talk about this a lot. This has been going on since before aviation. Before we had planes in the sky, we're seeing the same things. So what does that tell you? That tells you that no matter what, this has been here since before the dawn of human flight. Therefore, sure, can some objects and some anomalies be attributed to foreign adversarial tech? Yeah, of course it could. However, when you see an object that's hovering 10 feet over the water shoot up into the magnetosphere in the blink of an eye, I'm sorry, but the Russians and the Chinese do not have that technology. And I'm not a military insider. I have people that I
certainly didn't have it in 1947.
Are insiders. But right, and it's like, all you have to do is look at all of this in totality. Because what they're trying to do a lot of times, I think, is they're trying to get people to look at this in the now, like, oh, it could be new tech.
Well,
look
that's
at
exactly
this in totality.
Why. Yeah, that's why the Aero report doesn't want to go before 1947, because that's the only thing plausible that they can say, oh, we had rockets, we had this, we had that. Now, if they go back to the reports in the newspapers from 1898 in the Texas flap and the Indiana flap and the Illinois flap, they had all kind of sightings of the things that look like pirate ships in the skies, dropping anchors and such. So they're like, oh, we'll just ignore all of these things and we'll stick to 1947 and on. So this doesn't. It's a way to obfuscate the fact that you can say, okay, these go back a long, thousands of years possibly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Digby, we have one more news story. I know that our guest, our friend Fringe, is here.
Yeah.
I think we should bring her in for this one.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to say quickly the link the app that I put up for Christian it's the same for. It looks like it's the same for Instagram as it is for Twitter. But yes, by all means, if Fringe is ready, you're more than welcome to bring her on board now.
Fringy.
Would love to get her thoughts on this particular.
Actually, this story's right up her.
This week's guest.
Fringe.
Fringe. You have beautiful hair.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm not playing with it too much because I'm not into this video thing. I'm not set up for this at all. And I want to know where is Paul? Where is Paul? Where is
He's
Paul?
there. He's just frozen.
I'm just frozen in time. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm doing this like.
Maybe you could switch over to your camera for like a second and be like, "Hi, Fringe. Good."
That's what it looks like.
Okay, I'm echoing.
We decided to freeze him so he wasn't too distracting, you see. So
thank you so much for being here with us, Fringe. It's an honor and a privilege to finally be able to actually like sort of meet you and be face to face somewhat. So all the spaces that we've done together, you're one of our favorite people in the community. I think you're a tremendous human being, and I'm just really appreciative of the fact that you took the time to be with us today. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invite. Or the strong arm from Paul.
The strong arm.
It's all my fault. Yeah.
I saw the DMs and I was like, oh.
I couldn't help it, man. Like it's like my personal hero's coming on. I'm so glad. This is great.
He's such a big fan of yours. Such a big fan.
I am.
So we have this last news story.
The breath of honesty. She's the most honest person in the entire subject.
I totally agree, and that's why I want her in on this one, because I find this story to me is low key extremely important. It's fascinating, and I think it's very indicative of a particular thing that I have in my head here. So we're going to share this with you guys. Strap yourselves in for this one, because this is really interesting, especially for me, being that I was raised a Catholic. So I have a lot of knowledge of the Catholic Church. So I saw this on Reddit, literally just this morning, and we threw it into the show. The Vatican has introduced a progressive theological framework, as reported by the Italian newspaper Daily Journal of Italy, which broadens the scope of traditional religious understanding to include a multitude of cosmic beliefs. This innovative theology suggests that humanity is not isolated in the cosmos, advocating for a conception of God as an omnipresent intelligence and creative force that manifests through the energy and light responsible for the creation of galaxies and solar systems. It posits the universe as a living entity with every element from atoms to galaxies imbued with life and consciousness. This perspective extends intelligence and spirit beyond humanity, encompassing all celestial bodies as sentient beings. The proposed doctrine emphasizes practical application of its teachings in daily life over traditional rites and dogmas, promoting a vision of the universe as a harmonious creation paradise, while negative human choices form the basis of hell, and purgatory serves as a process for purifying the soul from the consequences of those choices. Now, central to this theology is the belief in the eternal nature of the spirit and the process of reincarnation as mechanisms for spiritual evolution. It underlines a universal brotherhood among all cosmic intelligences, stressing the interconnectedness of all life forms throughout the universe. The framework aims to unite humanity under a shared spiritual lineage, recognizing the potential of extraterrestrial civilizations to guide humanity towards a superior crisis-free civilization through cosmic intervention. Furthermore, this theology seeks to dissolve the divide between science and spirituality, advocating for a symbiotic relationship where technological advancements serve societal well-being guided by spiritual principles. It envisions the universe and all its components as integral parts of a vast living cosmic entity with solar systems and planets likened to cells within this larger organism, each playing a critical role in the cosmic balance. This approach not only redefines the relationship between the divine and the cosmos, but also emphasizes the significance of understanding the self as a pathway to comprehending the divine, encapsulating the essence of this new theological perspective. Boy, that's a mouthful, but my God, hearing this out of the Vatican.
That's
it's an interesting one.
That is just a volcanic shift in from what Vatican II to this is unbelievable that they said that.
It's extraordinary.
Well, they have to stay relevant, and if they don't do something like this, they're going to get left behind. And
that's what my mom said.
They need to make sure that there is a place for their belief structure in the future. And the reason why they're so scared of that now is because they know that something's coming. I mean, let's face it, we all know the Vatican know more than they let on. They're gatekeepers of an awful lot of information themselves. Italy always has been with this subject. It was in the 1930s.
That should be a big tell.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's a huge tell that something's coming. Yeah,
Vatican was the Vatican was part of forming the CIA, in fact, back in the 1930s, and it gave the crash source, or whatever you want to call it, to the what is now CIA, the yet to be formed CIA. But that was one of the first missions. These guys are at the forefront of all of this.
The timing is strange to me.
Yeah.
It's ironic, right? In light of current global discourse on UFOs and government transparency, UAPs have now transcended the realm of fringe conspiracy theories. It's become a topic of serious investigation and discussion by governments and citizens. And I mean, this aligns with the growing demands for transparency and truth about the nature of these intelligences and the objects. But it's not only that. To bridge the divide between science and spirituality by advocating for that symbiotic relationship, it's a significant departure from historical tensions between religious dogma and scientific inquiry. And when you look at this in the face of many individuals who have said that disclosure is running on a countdown, there is a clock running, and that there is a rush to get this done, why like in normal human terms, when you think, there's a rush to do this, there's a because, and the because is usually followed by an outcome or an event. It would appear, based on all of the puzzle pieces at this point, that something is coming. Something is going to happen. Something is approaching. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I was talking about this earlier because we're been watching Three Body Problem, and I thought to myself, well, instead of your typical alien invasion, what if there are refugees coming from another planet and they're aware of it, right? Maybe they were in contact with the governments of the world. Who knows? How would the world react to that situation?
I would like to hear what Fringe thinks of.
I'm excited to hear what she has to say on this one. Fringe, please, by all means.
Don't get too excited, guys. I mean, really. So the Vatican knows exactly what this is. They've known forever, probably longer than we've known anything. Just like Digby said, they're involved in the creation of the CIA. I mean, they're just getting out ahead of it. But this whole nonsense about our space brothers, going to be some type of partnership with humans and, welcoming God's creation is a bunch of nonsense, and they know it. But I mean, it is, in my opinion, part of their agenda to further this, what I do believe is going to be a new religion coming up. And if the Catholic Church and the Pope get out in front of it and then embrace this new religion, it could go to half the population overnight. So that's kind of how I look at it. It's just an agenda that they're putting forward.
May very well be. It's a little creepy though, because there's always been talk from different corners of the internet over the last 20 years of this idea that there would be an attempt by the powers that be to unite the planet under one particular spiritual message. You know, the evangelical Christians in the world would view that as very satanic and indicative of the end times. There's a lot of negative connotations that are typically attached to something like this. So I would imagine that there's any very religious Christian that would read this may approach this with a great deal of hesitation and uncertainty as a result.
Sorry, I had to mute myself there. There's a call to prayer going on in the background, and it was quite loud. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I just saw your message. It sounds cool, though. It's kind of like a beautiful chant, though. Honestly,
it is absolutely, but we're in the middle of Ramadan at the moment. So
Ramadan, right?
It goes on for longer. I mean, Fringe. Let's move away from the Catholic story, as interesting as it is. There's a lot of people watching this that, well, there's a lot of people that on here obviously know who you are clearly, but there's going to be people that don't know who you are. Would you like to explain in terms that you're comfortable with and in depth that you're comfortable with what it is that you believe and what it is that you've experienced? But only go as far as, you know, you feel comfortable with.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't want to bore. Probably the people who are in the room have probably heard my story at least a dozen times. But I'll keep it short. I mean, I don't think these are space brothers. I will tell you that I began my journey believing these were space brothers. I grew up in a Christian background, a very conservative type of fundamentalist Christian background. I have a lifetime of just supernatural things happening to me, but never did I put together the alien phenomenon with the supernatural phenomenon. And so I spent most of my life just knowing I have a lot of supernatural stuff that happens to me. I've got a lot of crazy stuff, you know, a lot of crazy stories growing up, and et cetera, et cetera. And then when I got into my 50s, I basically did some very simple exercises to just kind of connect my mind to my subconscious mind, and I started realizing there was a lot more going on out there than I had previously understood. When I first started understanding what was happening to me, I actually was in denial for a very long time. What was happening, I would now characterize it as what is commonly known in ufology as being part of this breeding program. I was of an age where that made no sense to me. It just seemed impossible. And so it took me several months, if not a year or so, to say, what is going on here? You know, I'm trying to put a lot of puzzle pieces together. But I think the important thing to know is, even though I came from a Christian background, I very much saw my experiences as our space brothers. I thought these were aliens from outer space. And so even though people might try to criticize me for being religious, and most people would call me Christian or religious or too religious or maybe even uneducated and unenlightened, I didn't begin my experiences that way. I thought these were aliens from outer space. In fact, the first time I ever heard, if you guys have heard of Ray Boucher.
Yes.
The first time I came across Ray Boucher was sometime in the fall of 2022. And I heard Ray Boucher call the aliens demons, or, you know, relating it to something demonic. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was ridiculous. I really did. And so I think it's important to understand my mindset. Yes, I came from a very conservative Christian background, 100%. But at the same time, I'm having these personal experiences and trying to wrap my mind around what in the world is going on. And the first time I heard a Christian pastor, Ray Boucher, who's also a paranormal investigator, speak in the terms of this being demonic, I thought it was silly. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought he had no idea what he was talking about. And so that's actually where I'm coming from. And then what happened was, over the course of, I'm now going on 2.5 years of having retaining consciousness during my experiences to varying degrees, up to 100% conscious as I am right now talking to you. I started realizing, and I look back and think, wow, it took me a long time. It shouldn't have taken me this long to realize. But I started realizing that these were not our space brothers, and they're probably not from outer space or from other planets, and they're actually probably from right here. And I think it would get a little too long and involved and complicated to even to go into those reasons. So I'll just tell you what I think. I'm not making a statement of fact. I'm giving my opinion and what I think after having, I stopped counting at 200 or 230 experiences in the last couple of years. So I think it's a well-qualified opinion. I don't think they're from here. I don't think there are space brothers. I think they've been here a very, very long time. And so to bring it back to this Catholic thing, I think the Catholic Church knows a whole lot more than I know. And I know you said, Digby, you wanted to stay away from Catholic, but we are the repository of information, of ancient information, and ancient information we will probably never see. And so actually the original question, you know, what are they doing? Why are they putting this out? I think we are going to be looking at a one world religion, something that, for lack of a better term, they want everyone to accept. And I think the Catholic Church is getting out in front of it. Yeah, what are Christians going to think? I don't know, because even though I ended up, let me see if I can keep this short. So I started out thinking they were my space brothers, and at some point I completely disconnected from Christianity altogether. I entertained all of the ideas about, you know, Yahweh, Old Testament God just being an Elohim, the inversion theory, you know, Lucifer's the good guy. This is all a lie. So many things I actually entertained over the course of several months while I'm having these experiences. And then I end up coming all the way back to Christianity, but I think it's a much broader view than most have, and I would probably be called heretical by most Christians. I mean, most Christians would call me a heretic, for sure. And so while people criticize me for that and kind of coming all the way back to religion, it's because of my own personal experiences in my dissection of what was actually happening that I actually came all the way back around. And so this isn't something I looked at just from a Christian point of view. Oh, they're all demons. No, I thought that was ridiculous until I met the demons. And then I said, oh, dang. I completely underestimated what this actually is. Hopefully that wasn't too much of rambling, but to try to stick with the question of what is this? And I think the Catholic Church and this new religion, or the people behind this new religion, know exactly what we're dealing with. And again, I'm just going to say it. I don't think they're from other planets at all. I think they're from right here.
Yeah, I think I completely understand your perspective, completely understand where you're coming from. And, you know, it's interesting you say one world religion. You know, there's elements of this, of the phenomena that bleed into so many other things that are going on around the world at the moment. You know, who else do we think has the idea of setting up a one world religion, one world government, all these things, the deadlines for 2030, everything that's coming out of the World Economic Forum, the way, you know, all these things, you know, and I'm a firm believer that everything is connected. You know, there's a lot of crazy shit going on in the world right now. There really is. And it's my belief, I may be wrong, but it's just my belief that I think that we will find out that this is all connected much more than we ever realized before. I completely understand what you're saying, and I agree with you, Fringe, about the demonic element of it. I think I would say my personal belief is, well, let me start also by saying, you know, I grew up in a Church of England household. You know, we weren't overly religious, but you know, we did our bit in church, and my grandfather was quite high up in Lincoln Cathedral and very respected in the community and everything like this. I completely turned away from religion in my 20s and 30s. And now I sort of find myself coming back to it, not in the same sense that I grew up in it, you know, going to a church school and everything like that when I was younger, but certainly taking elements of religion and going, I understand that now. And I think I've sort of come full circle and end up as quite a spiritual person because of it. And I think you take elements from all religions and go, hang on a second, when you look at it through the eyes of the phenomena, and you look at religious texts, the Bible and the Quran or whatever religion you're from, you can see elements of it written throughout it. You can see that it's just woven in there. When you understand the phenomena, I think you can actually understand religion, or the foundation of religion, an awful lot better.
Well said.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. And I think Fringe is so on the money with this. Like you, Digby, I kind of straight away, but I remember me, Tom, and Digby had a conversation not too long ago. Basically, we were talking about maybe we're witnessing the formation of a new religion. And I'm so glad that you said that, Fringe, because like, it is.
Oh, wow, you're right.
With people like Diane Pasulka talking about this, and she actually did an interview where she was talking about she thinks we're witnessing the same thing. And when you have the clout and the knowledge scope that the Catholic Church has just in its archives, and people like Diana Pasulka has access to those archives to be able to go in there and pull these things, and she writes books on them. But in one of her interviews, I think it was on Joe Rogan, I'm not sure, but when she said that, this is possibly a new religion we're creating right now. I'm like, wow, that's a big deal, and that's a lot coming from a person who has a lot of clout. But to hear somebody like Fringe say this with firsthand experience is it just kind of validates a lot of the stuff that me, Tom, and Digby talk about on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
I think that's what this comes down to, is something that I've been thinking for a very, very long time about the phenomenon as a whole, and it's the idea that everything Fringe has been saying is just, it's straight up valid, right? And it's just as valid as anyone else that has a different terminology that they're using for this, right? It's like, to me, demon, angel, interdimensional being, not like, they're all interchangeable. It's an intelligence that I feel personally is coming from some other construct of reality, some other fold that isn't normally visible to the naked eye. It's like, I very much align myself in the John Keel school of thought, the idea of the super spectrum, and that there are good forces that can come from there, and there are bad. The bad ones, some people can call them demons. Maybe some, there could be a million different names for them, but the intentions and the behavior are that of a negative connotation. And then there are also beings that emanate from the same realm that have a very different attitude and a very different way of going about what they do. But to call them demons and to call them interdimensionals or NHI, I think it's just all the same thing. But it exists. It's here. I don't know if any of you have ever seen the Mothman Prophecies film. There's a clip, my new YouTube video, that one of the ones that I'm working on, not to spoil too much, but one of the ones that I'm working on has a clip where there's a conversation going on between the main character and an author about these forces, and he talks about how they just have a different vantage point. It's like, why does it keep showing up when something's about to happen? It's like, well, it's, basically has a different perspective on time and space and changes in matter and such. But I got to be honest, Digby, you said something that really struck me just a few moments ago that I hadn't.
Which part?
When you mentioned the one world government and how things are kind of playing out politically and such. It's like you hear that, right? Right. Well, you see the writings of like Klaus Schwab and others talking about, essentially resetting everything, global economy, and Agenda 2030. Everybody's all familiar with that at this point, right? No matter how you feel about it, it's out in the open. There are white papers on it. Those writings exist. This isn't something that somebody thought up in their basement. It's been around for a number of years, actually. I remember them starting to talk about it like in 2015. I remember hearing about Agenda 2030 very early on.
It's been a plan for a long time.
If you couple that with this news story that I just read, and then couple all of that together and listen to what Fringe has to say, it begins to make a lot of sense. It's like when people talk about Project Bluebeam, right? Like, people use that term. That's not what this is really called. Bluebeam is a term that came out of a book that somebody wrote. But the idea that they could do something like that. Those technologies very much exist. If they want to put an armada in the sky and make everybody hear a certain something, they can do it. They can definitely do that. And so we have to keep our eyes on that, right? Like the fact that, you know, maybe it's possible that what Werner von Braun was warning about on his deathbed, even though I don't trust him as far as I could throw him because of his particular resume, as intelligent as he was, you have to at least be open to the idea that this could be a very dangerous game that they're playing. But it doesn't change the fact that these forces exist, in my opinion. I have seen them. I have witnessed them recently. You know, these 2 red orbs that are just hovering over the road. Fringe has had more experiences than my lifetime 10 times over. But I've had enough to know that we are dealing with something that is tangible, it exists, and it is powerful, whatever it is, and it can do as it pleases.
Fringe, my initial thought for you is what, at what point, when you said you went from the transformation of the Space Brothers to realizing that it's not what we think it is, what happened to cause that change?
So it took me a long time to even accept what was happening. This is not something that you just think, oh, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to speak for myself, because some people might think that this is something that's good. I don't know, for lack of a better term. But for me, it took me a long time to wrap my mind around it happening at all. And again, how can I be part of this breeding program? And TMI, I'm over the age for that, right? And so I'm 55. And look, nobody wants to hear my personal business, but it took me a long time to go, how could this be happening? This makes no sense, because of science tells me this is impossible. Well, I just found out a couple weeks ago, and look, maybe I should have known this. Postmenopausal women still have aches. And so, okay, well, I didn't even know that until maybe last week. I figured this out with another abductee. And so
really?
It took me a long time just to wrap my mind around that. But during this time, these are my space brothers. I'm flying around on spaceships. I'm eating hybrid children. Everything about it told me that these are ETs from outer space. And so what changed my mind, or what got me to really start thinking about it, was when I realized they were transferring my soul out of my body. And that took me a long time to realize too. And so much of what I say, that I sound so, I get criticized for sounding so authoritative. And I'm sorry, but I think that's because ufology in general does suffer from a bravery problem, which maybe we could talk about in a little bit. But this is, I didn't come to these ideas lightly. This took many, many experiences. And so it took me a long time to realize they are transferring my soul. They're putting me into what I perceived as a computer system. They're putting me into other bodies. So the time is passing by, and I realize there's more to this than just being aliens, and even at that time, I didn't even understand why they would be doing what they were doing. And so it took time to even accept. And then it took time to wrap my mind around what could really be going on. And then it took time for me to realize they're actually transferring what I think of as myself out of my body, my entire self. And that's including my astral body and my consciousness, or my mind.
Were you outside of yourself? Were you looking at yourself, so to speak?
What's that again, Paul?
What, were you looking at your body or looking at yourself, so to speak?
Oh, no. I was inside. So they would take me out of my body and put me into other bodies. And think about how long that takes to understand, because the state
I'm having
of
a hard
mind,
time wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, it took me a while too. The state of mind that they put us in it's mind control. And it's almost like being in a state of under anesthesia. And so, people say, well, how do you know you weren't dreaming? Well, how do you know you're not dreaming right now? Would you even be able to articulate it? You probably couldn't. And so I don't want to lose the original question, which I started swearing I was going to start writing down questions. And And so when I started realizing they were transferring my soul, and I started realizing I was going through this really weird testing, and I'm just going to keep this general because so many of my experiences kind of overlap and have to bring them all together to come to a conclusion. It's not any one time that has brought me to my ideas and my thoughts. I started going through this testing and I realized, what would Space Brothers want with, and it's for lack of a better term, my soul. Some people might call it their spirit. So it seems that our astral bodies anchor our soul into our body. And with that comes consciousness. So we don't need consciousness. We don't need a brain to have consciousness. You go out of your body, your consciousness stays with you. It's just part of who you are and part of what you are. And so when I started realizing that, that's when I had to stop and say, what would the aliens want with my soul? What would they want with my very being? They don't need my being to create a hybrid child, or do they? And that opens up a whole other list of questions. And so when I started realizing that, Paul, hopefully I'm answering your question, is when I started saying, wait a minute, what is happening? This doesn't smell right. And I'm actually, I look back on my experiences and I think, man, that took me a long time. It almost took me an embarrassing amount of time, especially with my background, to figure out that this was not what it appeared to be. And so once I realized that, I started pushing back during the abductions. I started actually even at times physically pushing back. And I don't want anyone to get this wrong. I'm not a superhero or anything, because they just knock you out right away when you start pushing back. But as I started pushing back, I became subject to more and more punishment. And people will say, oh, that's just a misunderstanding. It's just your subconscious mind. And, people can say whatever they want. Because all that is them making them their own selves comfortable, is to think that I can't possibly actually be telling the truth, or that I can't possibly actually be seeing this in a correct manner. And so there's a lot of excuses that get made when I open my mouth. And that's okay, because people have to comfort themselves. Because if people knew what this really was, nobody would be sleeping at night. So that's how I figured it out, Paul. And then the second I started pushing back, and you'll hear this from other abductees, the second you start pushing back on the Space Brothers agenda is when you will suffer severe punishments that I won't get into. But they're severe, they're unambiguous. There is no other way to see it. There's no other way to process it. It is what it is. And other abductees will tell you the same. And so once I started having an inkling that this was not what it appeared to be, the whole game changed. And the appearances were not even being put up anymore. And so I think it's important for people to understand. So for whatever reason, and I think I do understand the reason, although I don't understand the process behind it or the mechanics behind it. But for whatever reason, the second I just stopped to look up, I could see behind the curtain, so to speak. It's like understanding, when you're maybe 4 years old and you go to Disneyland and you see that Mickey Mouse costume, a 4-year-old thinks it's Mickey Mouse, that's Mickey Mouse, and they get all excited and they want to rub and hug the costume, right? But as an adult, how many times, at what age do you start saying, hey, that's not Mickey Mouse, that's some teenage kid, trying to make some extra money in high school. We can see that.
What a great analogy.
Yeah, and so when I started being able to see very clearly, and I mean literally clearly, where I could look and realize that they were actually putting on a perception for me, all I had to do was stop and pay attention instead of going along. I had to stop and pay attention. And when I stopped to pay attention, I realized that is not Mickey Mouse at all. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't. And so once I started pushing back, I was severely punished. And, people say things like, well, you're anthropomorphizing the phenomenon. You just don't understand. It just takes a higher level of consciousness. You're just, not seeing it appropriately. And they try, and this happens a lot in UFO Twitter, as much as I love the community, and the community literally saved my sanity. when I found UFO Twitter. But finally, eventually. We're also very dysfunctional. And I have found that in general, we're just suffering from analysis paralysis. There will never be enough evidence because so many people have been, in my humble opinion, overeducated. So people can look at me and say, she's undereducated, she's unenlightened, she's a Christian. Of course, this is how she sees it. And I can't get any credit for just being, I'm 55 years old, I've been around the block a couple times, and once I started trying to figure out what was happening, I actually figured it out. So there's no credit for that. It's just.
I think you actually get you're doing yourself a disservice there, actually, because there's a vast, large community that actually really respects you, what you say.
Oh yeah.
You have so much support. Having you come
you
on,
are loved.
Highlights that we've had, and people have been asking for you to come on for ages and hear what you have to say. So
and we love you.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to interject and put that point across because you have a lot of support and a lot of people that really listen to what you say.
And I appreciate hearing that. And so I think what's happened is we've become so locked up by science. And so science, in my opinion, has put us in this tiny little box. They decided what the laws of physics were, a couple hundred years ago. I don't even know when. I only went to 9th grade, y'all. I didn't graduate from high school, let alone go to college. But I look at that now as my benefit because I was educated in the police department. I did 20 years in law enforcement, talking to people every day and doing investigations, trying to figure out who committed a crime and who's lying to me and who's not. And so I think what's happened is just as maybe it's just Western society, I'm not sure. We've gotten locked up in this tiny little box of science telling us this is what is possible. Anything that's outside of this little box, and by the way, if you can't verify it, if you only have a little tiny bit of evidence, you have to keep searching for more and more evidence, right? There's never enough evidence. We're always looking for more and more evidence. And so we have that little box that we're in. Anything outside that box can't possibly be real. And then you have religion. Religion will just say, oh, of course Mary was a virgin. Of course Mary was a virgin and she was overcome by the Holy Spirit and she had a baby, of course. And so I think what needs to happen is for science to stop saying this is impossible, it doesn't fit within my so-called laws of physics, and to say, let's just take this statement at face value. Tom saw a spaceship that he describes as A, B, and C. Let's see if we can work that problem backwards and figure out how that could possibly be, rather than that's impossible. Where's your witnesses? Where's your evidence?
Yeah.
And so, and I think, when I came to this community, I was astounded by, this goes to a post that was posted earlier in the week. I think Tupa started it, and then Ulrich picked up on it, and then Reed Summers picked up on it. And it was UFOlogy has a bravery problem. To get back to something else I said. I'm going to read something that Reed Summers says. It is being unwilling to go from possibilities to probabilities, an act which does not require any more evidence than we presently have. And yet we are in a community, we're in a community of people who are here because they probably have had some experience with the phenomenon, whether it's the supernatural side or the UFO side or a combination of both. Yet we're surrounded by an entire community of people who are here for that reason, but yet will not accept any amount of evidence, even if it's anecdotal. They will not accept any amount of evidence to prove what they so desperately want, which is disclosure. And it's this bizarre dance. And I just found it very curious. Let's just go to experiencers. You have how many experiencers and abductees saying, well, I'm getting ripped out of my bed at night. Okay, once that is said, does it matter if I see something different than someone else sees? Let's just start with, is something taking us out of our beds at night? And you have thousands. And look, you guys, I didn't even know this. When I found UFO Twitter, I had no idea that there was something called abduction research, where other abductees were saying the very same things that I was saying. No idea whatsoever. I had no clue that this was being said. I wasn't involved in ufology. I didn't talk about UFOs. I wasn't talking about aliens. This is not a thing for me. And so we have all of these experiencers saying, hey, this is happening. And so at what point does that become evidence, at least anecdotal evidence? Now, can we know the entire story from that? No, because we're dealing with something that can manipulate our perception, and they're master manipulators and master deceivers. And so we would have to look deeper than that, but can we just start there? Can we just start by saying we have enough anecdotal evidence to say there's something here and go from there, instead of being caught in this analysis paralysis where there's just never enough evidence to know anything. And so the community.
Did you ever have people involved with your experiences too? Like, was there humans and the costumed entities or whatever they were?
Yes, I deal with a lot of humans, a lot of telepathic humans.
So does that imply a governmental intervention kind of feeling or thing?
It's a complicated answer.
Or is it not?
So
yeah.
Go ahead. I can't see your face, so.
Oh no! You're spot on. So I was just saying, it doesn't have to necessarily be governmental, implications. I wasn't sure how you were seeing them, I guess, and in what capacity. Were they like working together kind of on you or something along those lines?
Yeah, so I see, so there's the way it presents itself, and then it's what's actually there. And let me back up. So over my lifetime, I've become aware that it is very, very difficult to be put under anesthesia. And I've had medical procedures, multiple medical procedures, and it's just a thing. I could use 3-4 times the amount of anesthesia that it should take to knock me out. And it gets to the point where they can't do it. So there's no safe amount of anesthesia that can actually knock me out, enough to have just a twilight sleep medical procedure. And so I think what's happening is there's going to be a correlation between people who have a rough time going under for anesthesia and people who are able to retain conscious memories during abductions. And all I have to do is stop and ask myself what was going on for this to happen. And I can get into a whole list of reasons why I believe this happened. And so once, it took me a while to realize what was happening. It took me another while to not take everything at face value. It took me a while to stop and say, okay, what am I really seeing here? Is my brain filling in something I don't understand? Is this a thing appearing to me as something it's really not? Putting together things like the energy that's coming off of the beings and their behavior that's coming off of the beings. And so, Paul, I do believe that I have frequent contact with what I would characterize as humans, telepathic humans, telepathic humans that have access to extraordinary technology. And this is above and beyond. This is completely separate from any grays or any non-human intelligence that I've seen. Now, could I be getting fooled by this presentation? Yes, I could be. I'm not infallible. I'm not 100%. I don't even know if I'm at 80%. But what I can tell you is there have been many cases where they have presented to me as something, and then they realize that I'm not buying it, and they will change right before my eyes into something else. And so once you've seen that and you understand that they can just change their appearance, and now you're trying to match their behavior and their energy, everything about them, does this mean that the government is involved? Does it mean the government's involved? Probably not. I mean, we could be looking at a breakaway, a civilization, humans that survived a cataclysm, humans who were given what I would refer to as a fallen angel type of technology a couple thousand years ago. Think about how far ahead of us they would be.
Yeah.
But is the government involved? Yes, I do believe the government is involved, because I have a whole separate section of nonsense that is my labs, which also took me a long time to wrap my mind around. And I'll just wrap it up, hopefully, by saying the more I look at what's happening to me and continuing to happen to me, the more I believe that things that appear to me to be separate and maybe separate agendas, separate groups, are probably all working together on the same team. And that's when things just go, wow, what does that mean? And then maybe we'll just bring it all the way back around to what Digby started this with, which is they're all on the same team. This is all the same agenda. And I'm only speaking of the negative side right now, by the way. I'm not saying all aliens or all of these things are negative. I'm saying you have the negative alien agenda, so-called, but working with the negative human agenda, and they're trying to bring about the same end and the same agenda.
So, Fringe, I've been this question's been kind of marinating in my head. So, from your perspective, why? So it's a two-part question. Why are?
Get it?
What, given your current perspective on what you've experienced and what you think is going on, what these things are, what they represent, why are there crash retrievals? Like, why is there technology that's being found, maybe bodies and such? And why, if they aren't from another planet, let's say they're from another construct of reality, interdimensional, whatever anybody would like to call it, could have 10 million names. Why are they creating hybrids? Why is that program even going on? Because when someone thinks about hybridization, the first thing that people usually come across in their own minds is, well, they're experimenting because they're scientists from another world and genetics. Right. Okay. Let's push that aside. If what you're saying is absolutely right, why then are we finding materials and reverse engineering them? And why are they creating hybrids, in your opinion?
So why would we be finding why would we have crash retrievals? Well, I think they make mistakes. I think we have weapons that can bring them down. I think they make mistakes. I know there's this idea out there that that these might be gifts of technology.
Right, gifting sites and such, right? Yeah, Jacques Vallée talks about that a lot.
I'm not sure I would, I don't have any conclusions there. I would be open to either way. I can tell you they're not infallible and that they make mistakes. They're not, I'll just speak to these metaphysical beings that interact with us the most. They're not infallible at all. They make mistakes. And so why are they creating hybrids? Well, you have the idea, of course, on one side that, and I believe this is the idea that most of the establishment in ufology has embraced, is that they are upgrading us to human 2.0, that they have messed with our genetics in the past, and that this will be an upgrade, and that this is a good thing for humanity. And these are, our space brothers, or, even if they're interdimensional beings, they're here to upgrade our consciousness and to make things better. And they're here to make humanity better. The other side of that is obviously the David Jacobs side, which is they're creating hybrids for a planetary takeover. You're going to hear Dr. Brandenburg say the same thing. And so which side is correct? So can we agree they're making hybrids? Okay, let me go back to that. I'm actually very fortunate to be in a chat with Ted Rice. I get to communicate with him daily. Ted Rice is extremely psychic. He started out as a psychic medium. He believed that his spirit guides were benevolent beings. These spirit guides gave him a lot of information. He helped a lot of people, a lot of good, accurate psychic information. And then there came a point, and I'm not going to just tell his whole story, but there came a point when he realized that these were not spirit guides, and they were not here to benefit him at all. And one of them was even a reptilian that had done some terrible things to him as a child. And so I'm in a chat with Ted Rice. I'm not sure if anybody saw the podcast I did with Ted Rice the other day, but Ted Rice asked me to explain the hybrid situation. and I did a little post about it. And I think what people didn't understand, and I actually had to explain, Ted Rice, who's an OG abductee and a psychic, does not believe they're creating hybrids at all. And I promised Ted that as long as I could, I would represent his point of view anytime we talk about hybrids. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because this is going to be my first opportunity since that post. And so are they creating hybrids is actually the first question. I think there's a lot of reason to think they are creating hybrids. But if you talk to Ted Rice, he believes that they're creating clones. Now, I believe they're creating clones too. But he believes that the hybrid program is actually a deception and a distraction to throw us off what they're really doing. And if you want me to say what he believes they're really doing, I certainly will, since we are in a small audience and talking about the dark side of the phenomenon. He believes that the breeding program is actually a distraction from the feeding program. And so Ted Rice has many experiences, or certainly enough to convince him that much of what we see with the breeding program is just a distraction, and that it's actually that they are using us for food. And I mean energetically, and I mean physically using us for food. And so I wanted to
before.
Because it did come up. I'm sorry, who am I speaking over?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
So is there a breeding program is actually the first question. I think there is a breeding program. And what I tried to explain to Ted behind the scenes is it can be both. And I think what happens a lot of times on this subject of ufology or aliens and whatnot is we look at things as black and white. And really a lot of times it's both, or there's an overlap. And so could there be a breeding program and a feeding program? I think the answer to that is yes. And so what are they doing? Again, if your establishment ufology, they're here to upgrade us to human 2.0. If you're me, they are absolutely not. Because if you have contact with hybrids, you understand that they are actually taking away the best of humanity, the things that make us love, empathy. You know, human beings get a really bad rap. All we talk about is how terrible and awful we are. But we're actually also very wonderful.
Yes.
How many human beings do you know or have you seen? And I've seen this with my own eyes over even just in my law enforcement career. They would give up their last meal to an animal, to their dog. Mm-hmm. You know, there's homeless men on the street who will feed their dogs first. They will give you their shirt off their back. So what makes human beings wonderful is what they're taking away. They're taking away the ability for love and for empathy, and they're breeding in the gray genetics of robot, no empathy, no capacity for love, no capacity for spirituality or for God. They're hive-minded, they're telepathically connected to the infrastructure, for lack of a better term. And then what's happening is at least some of these hybrids, they're being raised in very much orphanage type conditions. They are not getting any love from a mother, especially. They're getting no any parenting from a father or any parenting at all. And so many especially of these male hybrids end up in a very narcissistic, sociopathic type of personality. And they're very extremely abusive to abductees, especially female abductees. And so is this an upgrade? I mean, you can come to your own conclusions. Now, you don't have to take my word for what I'm saying hybrids are like. You know, you don't have to believe that. You can come to your own conclusions the next time you meet one. But if you talk to the people who have been around hybrids, and I have been around many, but if you talk to Amy, Abductee Journal, she was David Jacobs' last abductee. He actually came out of retirement to work with her. She will tell you, I hope what I'm seeing is not real. I hope it's not true, because it doesn't look good. So what are they doing? I think
you tell us.
We can only guess.
That's the question, right?
Well,
like,
I mean, somebody keeps putting something in the comments, but I feel like, I think you are being very cautious about saying there's clearly an awful lot more that you know and that you could say. I just want to say, if you do want to go in that direction, please feel free. I don't need you to hold back.
This is the place for it.
This is the place for it, and it is a forum. You know, that a lot of people now watch the show, and I think this is a message. This is a side of the phenomenon that isn't spoken about, and it is uncomfortable to hear. But we grow through listening to things like this. We gain another perspective, another understanding. And I just want to say, use the opportunity as much as you want to say as much as you want. You're not going to offend anybody here.
Well, I appreciate
also,
that.
Fringe, if you have a particular message that you want to accomplish with this podcast, please do so.
Yeah,
there's
so
a reason you're here.
I did send that to Paul and Tom earlier. So I think this kind of all goes together. And so I found UFO Twitter at about this time last year. What is it? It's March.
You've only been part of UFO Twitter for like a year?
Correct. It's been a year.
Wow.
And on one hand, UFO Twitter, and you're going to hear me say this if you ever listen to me open my fat trap. I say this probably too many times, but it's true. So UFO Twitter saved my sanity. It really did. And I met a lot of people through UFO Twitter or through some type of connection from UFO Twitter who helped save my sanity. At this time last year, I was literally going through hell. It can't get any worse than actually being in hell. And so UFO Twitter, on one hand, it saved my sanity. I found a group of people who actually spoke about stuff that sounds like science fiction, sounds completely insane, and it's acceptable, to talk about, which was fantastic. I was hooked up then with the abduction research. Cambria posted Masquerade of Angels. The first time I opened that up and I started reading, which was literally the story. I shouldn't say literally because someone will take it literally, which was the story of my own life reading the Ted Rice story. And I'm just talking about a good dozen things that happen in that book. Things you can't make up. Well, I started reading the abduction stuff and realizing, oh my gosh, this is being spoken about. This is happening to other people. This is a story that was written years before I had any idea what was going on with me. And so on one hand, I found the research. I was very validated because I had kind of already come to my own conclusions on what was going on. And I will tell you, they are loosely held because I don't think you can plant too many trees in this area. I don't think that's, I think it's foolish in a way of we might miss something. We might miss something that if we decide this for sure is happening, A, then we might miss, B or C that might also be happening as well. Because A could be happening too, but you don't want to overlook the B and C that could be happening. And so I got to UFO Twitter and I decided to speak about what was happening to me. And the first space I came upon was Tupa and Logan. Tupa and Logan let me speak for 45 minutes or an hour. And they were very gracious and, allowed me just to tell my story. And people had a lot of questions, and they were great questions, and they were respectful, and everything was great and wonderful. My next experience was with Kimball and UFO Shane in the UFO intros, 3 to 4 hour conversation with great questions.
Wow.
I was just able to get my story out, and just getting your story out is very therapeutic because, when you're on the internet too, so much of it is just anonymous. People, even if they judge you, who cares? I don't know you.
Yeah,
go ahead. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so that was great, but I very quickly realized that most people didn't want to hear what I had to say. And when I started getting really down the dark rabbit holes of what was going on, I very specifically remember a space I was in. So that was the side that saved my sanity, coming across the abduction research and being able to tell my story and meeting so many wonderful, amazing people in this community. Very, great and supportive community. But then I was in a space and I was actually invited to speak. Somebody invited me, hey, Fringe, what do you think? And I got up there and I was in the space with a gentleman. I can't even remember his name. And he was speaking about how he, don't forget, Digby, you opened this up. he had had an experience where he felt like he had been sexually violated by the phenomenon. But that over time, he began to understand that this was not a violation. The phenomenon, this being that sexually violated him, explained to him that in the higher realms, this is actually an act of creation, and that he just wasn't seeing it properly. And he told his story, and that's his story. That's fine. You know, that's not what I would be thinking, but that's his story. And I said, well, and it was my turn to speak. And I said, well, that very well may be exactly what happened to you. And that may be true. I said, but what happened to me was unambiguous. It was not an act of creation. It was an extreme violation, period. Well, I was muted and told that I was not allowed to anthropomorphize the phenomenon.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. Not allowed.
What kind of shit is that?
And that day, I just thought, wow. And actually, a couple people unfollowed me, a few people blocked me. And that day, I just thought, wow, I wonder, you know, what's going on with this. So I went from thinking, you know, it's a great group of people. And don't get me wrong, it is a great, fantastic, amazing group of people. But within that group of people are people who really are, they're caught up in this analysis paralysis. You know, nothing can be true. We can't anthropomorphize the phenomenon. These are just higher level beings. We cannot understand them. They are unknown and unknowable. And so to say, or come say what I had to say was not acceptable. Because all I was really doing was putting my own low level human ideas onto the phenomenon, when in fact, just the statement, don't anthropomorphize the phenomenon, you've already actually done that, right? Because really what those people are saying is that, I do believe that those people, and I'm only talking about a handful of people in the community. I want everybody to understand, I think this is an amazing place, or I wouldn't still be here. But there are a handful of people in the community who have positively projected onto the phenomenon. And it's called giving away your gold. When you take everything positive within yourself that you can't see or accept, and you actually put it onto something else. And a lot of times this happens in the beginning of a relationship, right? You're in the beginning of a relationship, you're worshiping this person, they can do no wrong, you know, everything amazing and wonderful. And it's actually just a projection. It's a projection of all the amazing and wonderful things about ourselves. And we're actually putting that onto the phenomenon. And so when I speak negatively about the phenomenon, they have already anthropomorphized the phenomenon to be able to say that I shouldn't be doing it. Does that make any sense at all? So
yeah, they're anthropomorphizing the positive aspect, like, oh, it can't be this because you just don't understand it. So it's the same difference.
Exactly. Yeah. They have already set up the phenomenon on a pedestal, and no words can be spoken against it.
Incredibly naive.
It reflects on our own ego at that point, right?
Right.
So this happens, and I just decided that day. I was in tears that day. I was crying that day.
Oh man.
My husband came from the other room and he just went, "Forget these people. You don't need this."
That's right.
And that day I said, "Forget these people" is right. I'm going to have my own spaces. I'm going to do my own thing. This is when I reached out to Bridget and we did our Wednesday spaces for experiencers. And so what ended up happening from that, and the message that I had today, Paul, that I wanted to speak about, and I really appreciate you guys giving me the forum to speak about it, is I then started noticing, just the more I was around, I started noticing that this was happening to other abductees. And especially once we started our Wednesday spaces, I started getting messages from abductees saying, "Thank you so much for speaking up for us and for speaking the truth," because what happens, and this is what happened to me, and it's happening to a lot more people than just me, it's just that these people stay in the shadows, is what's happening is abductees are feeling like they can't tell their story, because if they do tell their real, true story, they are being called unenlightened. And, you know, they're just not sophisticated enough to understand that this is an act of creation. that it's perfectly acceptable to get ripped out of your bed at night. We're just misunderstanding the whole thing. And if you just had a higher level of consciousness, you would understand. And so abductees are being gaslighted in this community, and it really bothers me. So I can't tell you how many times I have been in a space and I have listened to an abductee tell a story, and I know that this abductee has already written to me and told me the real story. But the story is sanitized for spaces because, number one, it's therapeutic. They want to be in the community. They want to get their story out, but they have to sanitize it because the true and real story is not acceptable. People are getting dropped out of spaces. They're getting blocked. They're getting unfollowed because abductees who speak about what's actually happening and who are willing to say, it takes a lot of courage to say this is not okay. Because the acceptable narrative in ufology, again, is these are our space brothers. They're here to upgrade us. They're here to give us gifts of technology. And, we just need to embrace our space brothers. And anything that is not falling within that accepted narrative is shunned. And so,
like a Stephen Greer message almost, because he says that a lot.
It is the Stephen Greer message. It's exactly the Stephen Greer message. And so abductees, I'm not saying we have it all right. I'm not saying every experience is exactly what's happening. We're dealing with something that's very deceptive and manipulative. But I'm just saying, give us the space to speak. And, I give Astral a lot of credit. Astral doesn't really believe that people are even being abducted. And he believes that this is probably mostly a good thing. And yet he gives me a voice,
Right. He's a good guy. One of the best.
Times. Yeah. He will say, hey, Fringe is in the room, go look at her spaces. He will retweet my spaces. He will join in the spaces. And so that's what we need. We need people who disagree. People can straight up disagree with me. They don't have to agree with me. They can think these are space brothers. That's their prerogative. But at least give a voice in a safe voice, a safe space for people to give a voice to what's actually happening rather than having to sanitize their experience so that they don't feel unenlightened. Imagine telling an experiencer, well, that, you just misunderstood that. Oh, really? So now I'm ignorant and unenlightened. When's the next time I'm actually going to tell my real story? I don't want to be shunned by the community. I'm gonna adjust my story and sanitize it so I can fit in.
I think, your side of the story scares people. They're not ready to hear it, so therefore they back away from the conversation. I think I've got two questions for you. I mean, since the Tucker Carlson interview came out, where he started speaking very similarly to the way that you are speaking right now, do you think that people have been more willing to listen to your side of the story since they listened to him? Do you find you're getting a better reception now?
It's a good question. I can't say that I saw. Well, I will tell you that I think that Tucker's audience is more engaged now. I think Tucker has done a lot to further the conversation. And I do try to stay out of politics, things like politics and things like the vaccine. I try to stay away from it because it's not because I don't have my ideas or opinions. It's because it's so divisive that half the room will stop listening to me. And so I try to stay away from it. But how can we not say that Tucker has brought the conversation to a wider audience, right? And so you have people with very controversial views on both sides of the aisle. One side would look at them as controversial. The other side would look at the other side as controversial. But yet these people are bringing an audience to this topic, and that's what's important to me. So I think he's fantastic. I love that he brings an audience to the topic. I want to say I got a couple million views on one of my posts from Tucker Carlson. So yes, I think I probably got a lot of followers from that as well, because there was a lot of views. And one of them was a couple 100,000 views, and one of them was, I think, over 1 million and a half views.
Wow.
So yes, but what I have found and where my satisfaction is getting the private messages of thank you so much for speaking up. Thank you for telling my story. Because not everyone is in my position. I'm retired. I don't have to worry about losing a job or losing custody of a child or getting a divorce. And so many people do. And so they really can't speak up for themselves. And then if they decide to speak up for themselves, they sanitize their version of what happened so that they can fit in with this narrative. And so where my satisfaction is getting the messages that say, thank you so much. This is what I've been wanting to say for so long. Or thank you so much. I knew this wasn't okay, but I keep getting bombarded with, it is okay. They're here to upgrade your consciousness. So that's where, that's why I keep opening my mouth and why I'm here today, is just to kind of keep plugging away with that. And Digby, you're right. People are afraid of what I'm saying. I'm afraid of what I'm saying. If you have seen the darkness that I have seen, you would be very, very afraid. And that's okay. So people say, oh, you're just a fearmonger. No, I'm a truth teller. Yeah. And sometimes the truth causes fear. But if we don't have truth, where do we start without the truth?
I think anybody that's going for disclosure or involved in ufology, UFO X, whatever you want to call it, anybody that's pushing for that can't just have the filtered truth that they want to hear. They can't go, hang on a second, I only want to hear about the aliens and the spaceship that are here to come and save us. And you know what, from my point of view, I feel that there are two sides to the phenomena. I feel that there is a very strong side that you're talking about. I think there's also another side. That's my opinion. But in my opinion, I'm leaving space for yours. Okay, completely holding space for you and for what you believe. And actually, what you're saying actually, doesn't go against what I believe. It supports the narrative of one side of my belief.
Exactly.
But it's only through having the difficult conversations, and it's only through being afraid, that you perhaps can learn something here. And you can't push for disclosure and then not want the truth that's actually out there. You can't just have your version of the truth. Otherwise, we should all just sit back, not do anything, let the politicians do their work and give us the absolute BS that they want to give us filtered down at the end and do what we're supposed to do like good little sheep. I don't intend to do that. And this is one of the reasons why I created the show. When I went to Tom and said, Tom, come with me, come and do this show, is because these messages need to get out there. People need, I always said to Tom, I said, I don't want to be a show that self-censors. And if it means that we don't get monetized, I don't care. I'll find a way of making a living some other way. People need to hear the truth, whether they like it or not. And if people want to disagree with me because they say something about a vaccine or something like that, I couldn't care less. I don't know these people from Adam. As I said earlier, all this stuff is connected. And as soon as we start realizing that things are connected and that there are agendas in the government, and the agendas in the government seem to seamlessly match up with exactly what you're saying, Fringe, then you realize that there's a bigger thing at play here. And all these weird things and vaccine rollouts and lockdowns and World Economic Forum statements about reducing the population of the planet to 500 million, all this sort of stuff, everything is coming together and it's starting to fit. And it's not a 5,000 piece puzzle anymore. It's the Thomas the Tank Engine puzzle that you get as a 2-year-old that anyone needs to put together.
Why's it got to be Thomas?
Sorry, it's came to mind. It's not.
You're right. You're right.
I'm part of my language, but it's not a difficult puzzle to put together anymore. You just need to do it with your eyes open and not your eyes shut.
Right. That's the problem, right? I mean, it doesn't seem very difficult once you've put it together, but from the other side, it is difficult where everybody would see the same. And to your point, Digby, what I see in ufology in general is all of that positive projection onto the phenomenon. There is a real benevolent side to this phenomenon. I just happen to believe that benevolent side is not ripping us out of our beds at night and performing medical experiments and sexual violations and creating hybrids or feeding us to the aliens. That's just my opinion. Take it or leave it. Now,
makes sense.
A benevolent side, I've experienced it myself. I'm not sure I would be here right now if I hadn't had positive experiences. And so there is two sides, and it's the refusal to entertain the dark side is what the issue is. It's the refusal to entertain the possibility that there might be something out there that does not have our highest good in mind. Because there are two sides. I mean, it's my personal opinion. This is a cosmic war that started long before we were here. And so and I'm not sure who I heard say this, but we are the pawns and the prize. And so exactly what you're saying, Dig, the negative alien agenda actually works through us as humans and produces that agenda right here in 3D. And so anything you see happening in the world that seems to be negative, or that we could at least agree doesn't look like a good thing, these things are being orchestrated from behind the scenes. The first step is to stop and say, is there something wrong with this physical universe, this physical 3D that I'm seeing? And then you need to realize that it goes much, much deeper than that. And there's so much going on that is just beyond our physical, just beyond our eyesight and our physical senses. That is happening. And again, I've been called a danger to disclosure. I've been told that linking up conspiracy theories is not good for disclosure. But I just speak the truth as I see it. And that's always where my alliance will be. I'll give you a good, for instance. There's a half of my family. I was in foster care. I was adopted on one side of my family. When I was in my 30s, I met my biological father's side of my family.
Oh, wow.
And when I started understanding what was happening with the entire side of that family, at first I thought he was crazy, batshit crazy. And then it took me, again, a little while to say, maybe he's not crazy. And I started actually investigating the story he was telling me. And so I will tell you that my biological father's family was involved in human trafficking ring. It was international. It was the entirety of the family. It was my father, it was my grandfather, it was my grandmother, and my aunt and my uncle, and then various extra family friends and etc. They were involved in trafficking to what we would call the elites. In fact, one of his best clients and most regular clients was in the United States Senate up until recently.
Oh, wow.
Recently, this last year. And so he would tell me, and at this time, I'm 10-15 years into my law enforcement career, 10 years at least. And he's telling me things that it's mind blowing. And again, at first I thought he was crazy. And I wish I had written down all of the things he told me, because I would be able to write at least a novel. That I later checked up on and found out that he was absolutely telling the truth. And I mean records, like prison records and newspaper articles and et cetera, that I still have. So he's involved in a human trafficking ring. They're obtaining humans, mostly young girls, from Thailand, but they're also picking them up on the streets. And they're picking them up, and they had a place in Nevada, they had a place in South Idaho, they had a place in San Francisco, and they had a place in Florida. This was an extensive operation. So I'll just keep it general and say that there is a connection between UFOs, the phenomenon, and human trafficking. And the idea that there are satanic rituals happening behind the scenes with some of our politicians and what we refer to as the elites of our planet. Again, this was something that I had not been exposed to. I had never heard of these things at that time. I will tell you that I have worked a sex table, sex investigations, and I've actually done a PowerPoint presentation to be presented at an international conference. I'm sorry, it was probably a national conference. I think it went international after that on human trafficking. So I did have a background in that, but never had I heard of the conspiracies of any kind of ritual abuse, or I didn't even know what the elites of the world were or anything. So I came up about this information just from almost a naive place. And so once I investigated this man who was my biological father, and I found all of the newspaper articles, I found out that he did do 5 years in San Quentin, and that everything he was telling me was true. I realized, wow, this is deep. This stuff is pretty deep. And now fast forward, just the last 4 or 5 years when, well, I don't know when it started coming out, but when all the so-called conspiracies started coming out. And people, I believe, I think these conspiracies have been so sensationalized to take away credit from the truth that's actually behind the conspiracies. And so there is some truth there. I can just tell you from my own experience with my own family, there is some truth to some of these conspiracies. And so that side of my family had experiences with the lady and with an entity called, it was De Nino de Atocha. And my father has been levitated in his backyard. And this was a generational thing that was happening on his side of the family. I've since spoken to him about it in more detail, but these things are all related. And so there's entity worship going on. There are satanic ritual abuse going on. There were rituals out in the desert with demonic entities going on. And at least one of his clients at the time was not in the Senate, but this person ended up in the United States Senate. And so there we go again. You know, we're kind of going to what you were referring to, Digby. This is what's happening is so deep and full of conspiracy theories that nobody really wants to go that far, right? Because that's just a little too far. Now we're getting into the QAnon type situation. Well, if you can't see that QAnon was a psyop, well, then you're on the other side, right? So there's truth is somewhere in the middle. And I do believe that there is truth to many of these conspiracy theories. And again, that's coming from my own personal experience. My family was doing it. My father was in jail for doing it.
Do you think Chris Bledsoe's being deceived? If that's the case, that was actually one of the audience questions too.
The audience questions. Well, yes, I do. And I'm probably going to say a lot of things today that people don't want to hear or don't, or that it will be seen in a negative light. I think Chris Bledsoe, and I've never met the man. I'm just, going off of what I've seen about him and seen of him. He seems like a very kind person, a very genuine person. He's probably the most investigated and documented experiencer on the planet. It seems like the intelligence community is taking him very seriously. I think he is probably from a wonderful family and just a good person. But do I think he's being deceived? Absolutely, I believe he's being deceived. Hopefully that answers your question, Paul.
No, yeah, it totally does. It's such a complex subject, and I got to tell you, I certainly appreciate you being so honest with us on all of your life experiences and everything you shared with us, because it's I'm sure it's not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's not always easy to talk about, but one of the things that drew me to you, and one of the things I love about you so much, is that you're such an advocate for the victims themselves, and you are so passionate about giving them the voice, and I think that's so important. And one of the things you told me before doing this interview that I was so psyched about, when you said that, well, if people are meant to see it, then they will. And I'm just thankful that you chose to come on and gave us the chance to talk to you about this, because I think it's just a wonderful thing you do to advocate for the victims and to bring a little reality and a little truth to it's not all rainbows and gumdrop kisses.
Right. That's the truth.
Put it bluntly.
It's a difficult sea to navigate. I'm thinking about a lot of different things right now. So like one of my closest friends in life is an abductee. And it's funny, you were talking about the anesthesia earlier. Like one of the first things that I learned about her when we became friends was that she has, I think, 12 or 15 autoimmune diseases. So she's got a lot that she deals with, but she's just such a beautiful person. And she has an immense difficulty with anesthesia. Like she told me that and she's skinny. She's only like 115, 120 pounds, 5'7". And she says the doses that they would have to give her like would be enough to put like a linebacker sized man out, like somebody that's much larger than her. And even that doesn't work. Like they've had to push it to the limit. Like, and they're like, hey, we can't give you any more because it's illegal. Like they can't do it. It's just you gotta think with everything that you're talking about, Fringe, that the illumination of truth, no matter how severe it may be, ultimately liberates the soul from the shackles of deception. I mean, this is a part of the data. You can't ignore this. Now, my personal perspective on all of this is that what you're dealing with exists. And on the other hand, there also exists the opposite side of that. And the reason I believe that is because we see it everywhere in nature. The yin and the yang, dual, like we live in what seems to be a very dualistic reality where there is light, like my ring light right here. There's also dark. There's a shadow in the corner of my room, magnetism, electromagnetism, all of the different forces in the universe. There always seems to be a two-sided quality to that. But that being said, nobody seems to want to broach the darker side of this, but we have to. We have to do that. The forcible removal of an individual from their home, irrespective of the time, that constitutes an inherent infringement upon the fundamental rights of personal liberty, privacy, and autonomy, all the things that we hold dear as human beings. And it's it's a hell for some people, right? And imagine that, right? It's like, you know, on one hand, somebody may have had, I know plenty of people that have had experiences that have the absolute opposite experience to you, Fringe. Like it's love and light to them. And that may very well be true, right? Maybe they're not being deceived. Maybe that's just what happened, right? Like some people have a good day, some people have a bad day. It's just how the universe works. But thinking about all of this now, it seems possible to posit that these entities, which throughout history have been ascribed supernatural abilities, right? It might actually have been employing technology analogous to our own, right? Albeit significantly more potent and advanced, potentially by millennia even, relative to the technological achievements of our species, at least. This is a muddy subject, and I can't, for the life of me, understand how anyone that is an experiencer wouldn't want to at least hear you out, right? So, like, I'm still trying to figure out myself because I've had so many different experiences, and I'm not sure if I'm an abductee. I've brought this up a lot on the show, but there's evidence. But I will not come out and be like, yes, I am, because that's not fair to anybody like yourself or anybody else. But these experiences that you've had need to be spoken about and treated with the utmost care and respect, but just like anybody else's, including those who have had positive experiences, because it's a part of the data. I don't mean to get too scientific here about it, but we need to be able to look at the broad general landscape of this particular phenomenon if we're ever going to get any damn answers. Like, regardless of what the truth may be, people have to come to terms with the fact that for a long time, they probably haven't necessarily been seeking the truth. They've been seeking the truth that they're comfortable with, right? Like, that's what I think, at least. And I'm even guilty of that 100%. To some extent. And that's okay. No, you're fine, Paul. Our show, we want to bring people like yourself on, but at the same time, I want to bring on anyone that's had these experiences. We've had a couple experiencers on the show that have, there's a lot of differing characteristics and qualities and such, but in my heart of hearts, I believe that they believe that what they've experienced is real, tangible, and it cannot be ignored because it's part of our reality. Like, embracing the harsh truth, right? It's easier to me, at least for me, morally speaking. I would rather embrace the harsh truth than live the convenient lie. And this is part of the story of the phenomenon. It needs to be discussed. Like, I know it's uncomfortable. A lot of what you've spoken about on the show today is shocking to some people and terrifying, and I don't want it to be true. I don't, why would I?
I don't want it.
One thing she brought up that I thought was interesting, when she was talking about how initially, like Space Brothers and things like that, like, so I remember somebody talking, I can't remember who exactly it was, but they were speaking about the phenomena tends to be a reflection of what you need or what you want, or they kind of play into those aspects of it. So, and I think at some point, Fringe probably saw through it, and then they're like, okay, it's time to beat it down, or just go full-fledged hard on it, just kind of staple it down and nail it to the ground, kind of thing. But the fact that she saw through it, I think, is interesting. And going from basically Space Brothers to what the hell is this? That's a big step, and I think a lot of people don't take that step. I think a lot of people are stuck in the love and light, and
I wouldn't even say aliens anymore, really.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. Number one, let's just say that people like to bring up this study that was done. I don't think it was done very well, but who am I to say? Let's just say 85% of experiences are actually great and wonderful and positive. Some statistic out there, but that, a few years out, 85% of people have decided that this is a positive and good thing. That's fine. Let's just take that at face value. Let's just say we are not dealing with entities that can actually distort our perception and master manipulators. Let's just take it at face value. That leaves 15% of us who are saying at least some of these things do not have our best interest in mind. So let's just take it at face value and say there are 15% of experiencers and abductees who say this is not a good thing, whether positive people are being deceived or whether they are 100% correct. Forget it. 15% of beings with the powers that humans appear to have is not okay. And that is something that we need to wrap our minds around. Let's say 85% of the phenomenon is completely benevolent or neutral and are upgrading us. That's fine. What about the other 15%? Because we are talking about beings with an immense amount of power and an immense amount of power of deception and manipulation. So let's just do that. Let's just start there and say we can all agree that 15% of what this is not okay, and they are not our friends. And go from there. I'm totally fine with that. I'm not here even to change anybody's mind about anything. Most of what I'm doing is, hey, let's have a conversation. Think about this. Think about this side of it. What if I'm right? What if this is true? In most of its fear. Do you think I want this to be true? Do you think that I want to know that my grandchildren are growing up in what I believe this is, if what's happening? Absolutely not. I went through an extreme crisis starting in about October of last year, and it's not over. So I don't want this to be true, but we can't just keep our heads in the sand. So let's just agree as a community. I hope we could agree on this. 15% of what's happening is not good. And these 15% of this phenomenon, they're not our friends. And just go from there. And just
in actuality, the entire basis for all of us being here was basically kind of Stanton Friedman talking about, out of the 1,200 cases that they had, they couldn't explain 10%. And he goes, well, okay, that's 700 cases. And we're all here because of those 700 cases, not the 1,200 that they dismissed. So it's the same concept. And I love the way that you put that.
That's also a really good insight, Paul.
Yeah, it was
very good.
People ask me, and people probably don't want to hear this either. People ask me, what do I think about the majority of what we see out there? And I'm sorry, but I think the majority of what we see is our tech. I think that we have technology that is extremely advanced, mind-blowing advanced. This technology very likely came from the non-human intelligence itself. I don't think we just, spawned it in the garage, but I think the majority of what we see out there is our tech. I think we probably, so we're dealing with that as well. We're not just dealing with 15% of a non-human intelligence that might not be our friends.
So a question about that.
What else? We have the military, for lack of a better term, the military industrial complex. I mean, we have corporations that seem to have outpaced our own military, private corporations outpacing our military on tech. And
for sure,
I think that people's minds would be blown if they had any understanding, even an inkling of what we are capable
they would be.
Humans in this country
right
now.
I know that to
So
be
let
true,
alone,
for sure.
Possibly a breakaway civilization that survived maybe an earthwide cataclysm, that they survived with their intact technology. And now they're 2,000 years more ahead of us. Forget the other planets. It's happening
Let me ask you a small detail question. I don't know if anybody may have ever asked you this before. Maybe they have. But in everything that you've seen, have you noticed anything that's definitely made for human, like human operation, or you know what I mean? Something like that would be stand out, like a joystick that's shaped like a human hand, not necessarily like some sort of alien hand or something.
I get what you're saying.
Like a detail that would definitely point to this is human technology. Aside from the things that we already have, like touch screens and whatnot, have you ever noticed anything like that?
So I have. Hopefully that's not too loud. It should stop. That's interesting. I have. So I have flown a few different types of craft. Only one of those craft, was there anything more than just consciousness interaction with the craft? And on that craft was a joystick. And it was, in my perception, it was I called it a black Tinker Toy helicopter. It had a joystick that was a touch joystick. And the joystick didn't do anything except for it was a connection. And so I held the joystick as a connection, but then actually flew the craft with consciousness. And I was one of many students, by the way. I had an instructor sitting right behind me, and I was one of many. And so that to me screams human tech. But, there's so much overlap, Paul. We can go right down to crazy town, but I test a lot of technology, believe it or not. I have been on this thing that looks like a hoverboard. These things scream human tech to me. So
why do you think they're having you test that though?
Well, I don't know. So what I don't know, and I've asked myself that. I actually just asked a very small group of people I really trust. I said, whose tech am I testing and why? So let's maybe pick that apart. Would aliens need me for that?
Probably not. You would think, at least, right?
I think, is it something to, sorry to interrupt just quickly, just while I'm thinking about it. Do you think it's got something to do with the fact that alterations that they've made and everything like that, you're saying that you touch something and then you're basically controlling it with your mind? Is it testing to see what they've done to you is actually effective and you are able to operate these machines? So is it something that they're trying to roll out to certain people in the population, and you're the crash test dummy, basically, to see if that's going to work?
Yes, very much so. And so then I would lean that direction. So do I know 100%? I don't. But when I look at what I'm doing and I start looking at the reasons behind it and who might need this, it screams human to me. Do the aliens need me to fly their spaceship? I'm thinking no. Although there is some abduction research that many abductees have been taught how to fly the craft, and that some abductees will be used as a force multiplier if and when the change ever actually happens. And so, I could go 50-50, but in reality, do the aliens need me? I'm thinking no. Do the humans need me for some reason? Probably. So I would lean in that direction. And some of the tech has been super weird. There was a pair of shoes that I was testing, and I was just going maybe 12 inches over the ground, not in a hoverboard way, but I was traveling forward in forward motion very quickly, just about 12 inches off the ground. Well, do the aliens need that? I'm thinking no. And so when I look at certain things, and keep in mind, I'm not having 100% memory of every single step of everything that has happened. And so for me, everything I discuss is conscious memories. And so I do believe that because I am one of those people, and apparently a lot of people with the MC1R gene, the redheaded gene, which I do not have, by the way, are difficult to put under anesthesia. So these people could be a curiosity, or maybe even a bloodline that's being manipulated by the phenomenon. But so I believe that this is probably what helps me retain consciousness. So I retain a degree of consciousness when I am in that environment. I'd say 50% is probably the lowest that I get. And that is very much an anesthesia feeling. It's kind of like if you popped a Valium walking into the dentist. You popped a Valium, it's made you relaxed, you're following instructions of the nurse, you need to go sit in this chair, we're going to push you back, we're going to put this bib on, and we're going to start working on your tooth. Well, you at no time do you think you're dreaming, right? You know you're at the dentist. And
right.
And you really should be, because you really don't want you to get your tooth yanked out, but that's what medication does. And so I'm only retaining a degree of consciousness. I will tell you that there have been times I've been 100% conscious, just like I am now, but there are times when I am not. And I'm in that 50 to 75% range, because there's this very, they're walking a fine line with this mind control, because they're not using drugs. We have to have enough control. You still have to be able to walk. You need to be able to walk to the bed and walk to the friggin' table and to follow instructions. You disrobe yourself. So you have to have a degree of autonomy and wherewithal, but at the same time, you have to be in a zombie mode, or you're going to go, what the hell? Which I have done many times. I have stopped and gone, what ever loving, you know what is happening? And then it just goes downhill. And so this degree of consciousness I'm able to maintain doesn't mean I have 100% recall of every single thing that's happening. And that's getting to what I'm going to say. So my conscious recall many times will match up with abductees who have been regressed. And so if I have a conscious recall that matches up with memories that have been regressed, I can now trust those regressions just a little bit more to me. And then the people who have been regressed can actually trust my memory a little bit. And then you kind of come together and go, dang, we might have something here. If we have, people don't trust regressed memories. I understand that. I find it crazy, to be honest with you, that you could somehow start remembering something you didn't remember before. And that's not including something like a flashback, or you smell something and you remember, oh yeah, when I was in second grade. But people who have been regressed, they very frequently can remember extreme detail. And those people are actually getting extreme detail that I am not getting. So I'm not always understanding, what is this for? What's it doing? Who's it for? Who's here operating me? I can try to figure it out, but I don't always have enough wherewithal to figure it out. I'm a lot of times in that really 50% zombie mode, where I'm going along because I know I have to. There's an extreme amount of mind control and influence that they're exerting, including on emotions and etc. And so whose tech is it? Is that where we started with this, Paul? I think a lot of it is ours. And why would that be? And I will tell you that every single piece of technology that I have tested, and I think there's been quite a bit, it's all the same. It works all the same way. And so I'm not sure if have any of the four of you ever been out of your body?
Yes.
Out of body experience. Yeah. Okay.
Or
had a lucid dream.
Yes. So, recently for me.
Okay. So if you've had a lucid dream or you've been out of your body, you know that you in that state of consciousness, you can actually manipulate your environment. And so let's say you're in a lucid dream. Let's just go lucid dream. Forget out of body. We'll go lucid dream, and you're in a lucid dream, and you wake up and you start kind of looking around. Maybe you do a reality check or two and say, this isn't, I'm not in the dream anymore. I'm actually, no, I'm dreaming, and that doesn't belong there, and that's not quite right. So here we go. And then the next step of lucid dreaming is actually being able to direct your dream, and you can make things happen in your dream.
Yeah.
But in order to make things happen, there's a very, very strange fine line of will and intention, but not too much attention. And so if you think about something too hard, it will fail. If you don't have enough will and intention, it will fail. And so there's this really weird state that if you think about it too much, it's going to fail. And if you don't think about it enough or with enough willpower, it's going to fail. And so if you know what it takes to travel the astral realm out of body, or to be in the astral dreamscape and be in a lucid dream. So if I'm in a lucid dream, I don't just fly away. It actually requires something within myself to be able to fly away. It requires just a thought, but it actually requires intention. And so, and there's a bit of fortitude there that it requires as well. And so it's a really weird balance. And I will tell you that all of the technology operates on that same balance that I have experienced.
Wow. That's fascinating.
So
I totally understand what you're saying.
I think if anyone's had a lucid dream or out of body, you know exactly what I'm saying. And it's really hard to explain to anybody who hasn't. And that's okay.
It's a balancing act, right? Like it's this weird mental gymnastics maneuver where you're like on one toe. You know, I don't know how else to describe it, but I do know what you're talking about.
Intention was so important. Intention is everything.
So if you're out of body, and people are going to know more about this than I do as far as the science, I'm just experienced it. If I'm out of body, I'll just speak for myself. If I'm out of body and I give the knowing that I'm out of body too much attention, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to go back into my body.
Yeah.
And so I need to have the will and intention to go out and about and, you know, try to travel somewhere, or try to accomplish something, or try to go see something. But if I give it too much attention, I would get sucked right back into my body. And this is the balancing act actually for all of this tech. You can't give it too much,
cord,
or it will malfunction.
Yeah, the cord.
What was that?
Oh, yeah.
I said when you notice the cord, also you go back.
Oh,
yeah.
I've never seen the cord, but yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I have seen the cord.
Interesting.
I saw the cord before I researched astral projection on the internet as a kid. And when I saw other people talking about it, that's when I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, wait a second. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, right.
A really strange state to be in. I used to be better at it, but it's fascinating. You mentioned earlier, too,
I could talk to
go ahead, Paul.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this was kind of interesting earlier. You mentioned that, I forget how you put it exactly, but you were talking about how the astral body was like an anchor for consciousness. Was that how you put it?
Maybe. So when the astral body is transferred, the consciousness goes with it. We don't need our brains. I mean, people are trying to figure out is consciousness local or non-local. And
that's my next video that I'm working on. Is like my framework of how that would like explain basically all psi phenomena, like precog, remote viewing, etc. Like non-locality answers all of those questions, honestly.
It does. And that we're even still asking the question is mind-blowing to me sometimes.
They still haven't found the brain generating it. I think that it's possible that the microtubules are like little receivers for it. And there's so many of them because consciousness is a very powerful field or wave, and you need that to be able to take it all in, and then it filters it.
While you're in the physical body, yes. But when you're not in the physical body, you lose nothing.
Right.
You know,
right.
You lose that, and so it's not necessary.
It's amazing to think about.
Yeah,
it makes sense. I think it just it resonates with me, and it I mean, you can look. It's scientific if you look. You know, it's not like I'm telling a fairy tale here, or you know, I have to like really stretch anything out for this to work. There's research. The recent research. My brother's college. He went to NYU for journalism, and they did a study back. It was like late 2010s, like 2017, 2018-ish, and they even ran a brief news story on CBS. They were one of the head of the project. What they did is they had people that were in ICUs, and what would happen is that when they were declared clinically dead, and now, mind you, a lot of these people were brought back, but they were dead. They were, for all intents and purposes, according to our scientific knowledge at the time, they were shut off. Their senses are off. Their brain is off. Heart, everything. You're dead. But then there was resuscitation. When that happened, they had a light that would blink, a real bright, like red light, and there would be a tone that would play. And they found that over 45% of the individuals that were involved in this reported the light, heard the tone, and then like 30%, 25% of them remember looking down at their body and such. And that is not what they expected. They're like, they're not supposed to be able to hear this. They're not supposed to be able to see this. Their senses were literally switched off, which means, and this is in the interview, if I can find the clip, I'll share it on X at some point. Something is happening after death that is a conscious experience, and we don't understand it. That has been scientifically proven, but it flew under the radar. I don't know how it flew under the radar, but it did. And if that isn't good enough proof for anyone, I guess you'll just have to die to find out.
There's never enough proof, right? There's never enough proof.
It's difficult.
There's never enough proof. And I think the day that science and religion can come together and trying to figure out what the ever-loving F is going on here is the day that we are all winners.
That's one of the things that the Vatican, I guess, got right with this new theology, right? It's like there does have to be, at some point, a convergence. That is true.
A marriage.
Yes, that is true. And I think that, I'm sorry, but I think religion is going to have it more right than science. And I think...
it's interesting.
Unfortunately, I think, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I think that we have some private corporations out there who know exactly what's going on out there.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
They know.
There was a great quote from Peter O'Toole. He said, once science finally peers over the mountain of truth, it'll find that religion has been there all along.
The whole time.
It's an interesting quote. I find that quantum physics and the things that we talk about in spaces and on the podcast, a lot of it points me back in the direction of, for lack of a better term, God. Or like, and I don't mean God like the Judeo-Christian God where he's, a bearded man in the sky. I'm talking about an intelligent force that seems to be this like foundation of all of creation. Like there are things in nature that just work so perfectly. It's like, so let's just say for a second the Big Bang really was the Big Bang. Like there was a point of singularity of something, whatever that may have been, and it explodes and it spreads out. That created everything I see, all of the materials in my room right now, right? All the materials around you all came out of the earth. This just all happened? Like, that's
crazy to think.
That's hard to wrap your head around. Like, it's mind-blowing.
I think sometimes it takes more faith to believe in science than it takes to believe in religion.
That's my favorite quote of this whole podcast.
Although
I think that's a really interesting point.
That so many of the things that religion thinks is supernatural is just technology. And so keep in mind that even though I say a lot of things that bother the so-called scientists or academia, Christians find me very off-putting as well.
We love you, Fringe. This has been one of our best conversations, and because you got to be open-minded, right? You got to look at all of this stuff. It's the only way we're going to get anywhere.
I put in the chat, I could talk to Fringe for 400 hours straight, and it's just so interesting.
I know, seriously. And Fringe, honestly, like, I genuinely, you've been so kind to me personally, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you for that. You have always been such a good friend from a distance. When I've had some tough times, you've reached out and have said some really beautiful things my way, and I'm very grateful that even from far away, and even though we don't talk every single day, I am happy to have you in my life.
Oh, well, right back at you, Tom. Again, this community has been salvation for me, literally. I've made so many good connections, and there's so many great and wonderful people here. All on a great and wonderful and amazing topic that's science fiction that we're just digging for evidence for, but that's okay. At least
why don't you tell people how to find you, so if they need to reach out to you and talk to you, they can find you on Twitter. What is,
I think everybody has a Twitter, Paul, but thank you. It's fringe.com on Twitter. I think probably everybody in the chat is probably
I think it's DOT, right?
Yeah, it's spelled
there we go.
DOTCOM. Yeah.
I believe I typed that right.
I highly recommend it to any abductee, any experiencer, anybody whose experience is supernatural. It's just a great place to be. It's a wonderful community full of great and wonderful people. I just wish we would get off of the analysis paralysis and get into, we actually have some data here that we can say that something is happening.
You're absolutely
and
right.
If anybody's too afraid to chat with anybody else, reach out to Fringe. She's a great resource, and she will be there for you. That's kind of her purpose for this whole thing, is to be the advocate. So I hope anybody out there that hears this and watches this later down the road can find some solace in Fringe, because you definitely will.
And let's don't. Great point, because it is UFO Twitter week.
Oh yeah,
be involved in a host of spaces. I'm going to try my best to get to as many of these as possible, even if I'm at work.
The busy schedule that we've got this week, eh?
Yeah, you got
that's true.
This week. Yeah, so
it's a hell of a week, and this is a hell of a way to start it. This was one of the best conversations about the phenomenon that I have ever had in my 34 years on this planet. I am so serious when I say that. Seriously, it was just unbelievable.
Appreciate being here, and we gotta everybody tune into UFO Twitter Week and start bringing more people to the conversation and more people into the community. It really is a great and wonderful place. Literally saved my life.
It is. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping now before we move on to our last bit. So, as Bryn said, please, everybody, look at the hashtag UFO Twitter Week. See all the spaces there. Astral's put up a poster. If you want to get involved in spaces, please drop in. Please communicate with people. It's a good community to be part of. Also, if you are watching us now live on X, which about 537 people are, could I please kindly ask you to pop on over to YouTube and search for @UA-pod and give us a little sub on there, because it really helps. We really want to move people over to YouTube and other streaming platforms like that. Excuse me. X is great when we're live streaming, but for us to be found by people after the live stream, having those subs on things like Rumble and YouTube really helps. So if you could please kindly do that, we would really, really appreciate it.
Yes, please. Thank you.
One last button that we're going to press. Tom's managed to wingle his way out of doing this and pass it on to other people for a few weeks. So Tom, this one, my friend, is completely all on you with no backseat.
Finally.
Speculation Station.
Oh, so I got to do it.
No backseat.
No backs. Ah, man. Okay.
And he threw it on me last week, so you have to do it this week.
Yeah. I was gonna make Fringe do it, but we keep doing it to the guests.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair.
I don't even know what she would. She has already said all that needs to be said.
Oh yeah.
It's not an easy one this week, is it?
I'll give you one.
No. It's
she'll give you one.
Kind of, it's kind of a tough one.
Wait, is this your segment of what should we be thinking about for this week?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do it. Go on, save his ass.
I'll have one too, though. But I would love for Fringe to pop in and drop one as well.
I'll throw one out there. And this was a post that UAP might put out this morning. It was an interview about a gentleman who had seen grays in the afterlife. And so my question would be, why, if this is true, because it's happened now to there's many accounts of people having near-death experiences seeing grays in the afterlife. So my question would be, why would that be? What would the reasons be for that?
Wow.
Just something to think about.
So I guess I will take your question and kind of reverse it, since I'm very familiar with the work of Whitley Strieber, who I'm going to have a chance to speak with later on in UFO Twitter Week, I believe early in the morning on Sunday. Holly, our friend Hollywood, is hosting that space.
That's going to be the best space of the week.
I think it's going to be a banger. I'm really excited for it. I've read Communion like 8 times. Like, it changes as I age. It's very strange, but it's a wonderful book. Why is it that some abductees have reported seeing dead relatives in the midst of their abduction on the craft, tangible and physical, just like the beings that are around them?
Are you asking me, or are you asking Whitley Strieber, or is that just a rhetorical question?
That's just the general. That's the general question for people to ponder. But hell,
I can answer it.
I was going to say,
oh my God,
yeah. Strapping in. Let's hear it.
I will say at least one reason, because there might be more than one. And I don't think we should ever get locked into just one reason for why things are happening, because a lot of times I realize that it's more than one answer. So a lot of times the grays are going to project any image that will gain your cooperation. And so they might even appear in your bedroom as your mother, as the lady, as your boss, as a dead relative. Anything they can pull right out of your mind to gain cooperation. And so they will project an image of your dead grandmother to get you to walk this way and to get on the table. And so, and if the dead grandmother doesn't work, they will just transform right before your eyes into something else that might. So that's at least one reason. Are there multiple reasons? Probably.
I've heard similar things from people that have done ayahuasca and that they've gone under, they've seen something that scared them, and then they've gone away and come back as something else. I've always wondered that doing things like ayahuasca and DMT and stuff like that, so that give you the ability to actually connect to something on a different level. Tom's putting his hand up. We all know why.
Because I may or may not have partaken in the substance at one point.
Big Brother is watching.
Yeah, Big Brother's watching, and throw the machine.
Which Big Brother?
Yeah, which dimension?
Big grey Big Brother, or the ones that are in a room somewhere?
DMT actually, like I went from being raised Catholic to I started questioning everything, and then I was fairly not necessarily atheist, but kind of like God sucks. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, religion's fuck, like all of that. And then a couple things happened. Then I did DMT, and now I consider myself to be a spiritual, like, agnostic. I do believe that I strongly believe in human souls. That I very, very much believe in, that there is a life force that makes us and makes us animated, and it's the difference between Fringe and myself and a desk and a rock. There's something inherently special about life, whether it's humans, dolphins, dogs, cats, birds.
Definitely the dolphins. They're far better than we are.
I love dolphins. They're so good. Let's interview a dolphin.
It's been an amazing show, guys. Thank you so much. Fringe, thank you so much for coming on. Just a quick little recap. Yeah, so we've just had Fringe on the show, which is absolutely fantastic. On Wednesday evening, we have got Matt Ford from the Good Trouble Show, say that again, joining us live at 8 p.m. These are all Eastern Standard Times, by the way. So Matt Ford's going to be with us live. You can come in and watch the show live, get involved in the conversation, get involved in the chat. We've got Francesco Giario from the European Union being streamed on Thursday. That's a pre-recorded one, so there will be no live chat on that. But I'll be on when we set it as a.
We can set it as a live premiere.
So we can still be there to talk to you guys, but we won't be
absolutely
on screen. And the same with Avi Loeb as well, which will be aired on Friday evening. I will confirm times with you guys later on this week. Then we are wrapping up the week with UAP Studies live at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by our closing of UFO Twitter Week. And then next week, the week after that, we've got Moneypenny coming on and joining us at 3:30 p.m. And we also have an extra interview to do that day with Christian, our 737 pilot. We'll get the details out of that to you as and when we have them and when he's confirmed. I think that's
busiest and biggest week.
It's it's a busy couple of weeks. It's been it's good to feel like we're really getting the show off the ground, which I feel like it really has started to do over the last couple of weeks. So thank you to everybody who watches the show, everybody who's subbed, everybody who shares our content. Keep doing it.